can you tell us about your diagnosis?
In June, we discovered colon cancer right near the ileocecal valve, which was creating a significant restriction that I landed in the hospital with extreme gastric pain. And I was unable to eliminate for 4 days. And they also discovered that time that it had transferred to the liver. Just 2 very small spots that I was unaware of. Mm-hmm. It was about 4 months leading up to that I was experiencing different symptoms, and culminated with it was finally discovered anemia that pointed to recommending a colonoscopy, because ankylosing spondylitis is another condition that I deal with, mm-hmm. which often leads to Crohn's for some people, mm-hmm. and could result in bleeding, which could explain the anemia. Mm-hmm. That's how we discovered the cancer.
Mm-hmm. And at the time of diagnosis in month of June, what was your CAA numbers?
I don't know about June, but the beginning of July, it was 8.1. Mm-hmm. At the beginning of August, it went to 9.1 and 10.1 at the end of August.
Mm-hmm. But then it began to escalate last fall, and it would pretty much double every 2 weeks.
Yeah, first I went to a holistic health center that primarily focused on raw living foods. I was there 5 weeks through September, first week to October. And it was not until about the last week I was there I could feel the liver beginning to
enlarge.
Yes. When I got home, I fell into some pretty extreme emotional eating. Mm-hmm. And the first test I had in October was the 26th, and it showed CEA was 162. Mm-hmm. And then I was tested every 2 weeks and through November, and it was doubling every time.
And like at the time when you were admitted, it was 559.
Yes, when I came here, correct. It was about 4 days before I came here.
Normally we do a 14-day exclusive program, and because of your condition and your situation, we've been doing a lot of creative things, and the protocol would involve up to 50 things sometimes in a day of different this and that and this little details, sometimes going every 5 minutes doing something at certain points. And we have done 2 liver flashes. Can you cover on that? What was your experience?
Yeah, I'd heard about that about 3 years ago too, maybe, and I really wanted to do it, but every time I looked online, the protocol seemed really difficult to follow, just too complicated. And I really found that your approach to it, especially the first 3 days of the prep work, really set me up for the best experience possible. It was extremely grueling emotionally, physically, mentally, and I honestly didn't know if I could get through it. Mm-hmm. There's no way I could have done that at home safely. Mm-hmm. And I was so harsh on you guys because I was reacting so strongly, and you just kept encouraging me through it. And when I thought I was just failing in every way, you kept telling me I was doing so well. Mm-hmm. And after the first one, I was surprised at how much lighter I felt emotionally after 2 decades of really severe clinical anxiety and depression, mm-hmm. and many years of counseling that was not effective for me. Mm-hmm.
But then we all did another one on the 14th day of the protocol, and there was quite a bit of resistance.
Yes, the night before I just was telling you to leave me alone, don't give me anything. I just need to lay here and be alone. And everything in me told me to tell you to stop pushing me, don't tell me what to do. Just emotional reactionary to traumas when I was younger. And you would not let me alone. And a gentle way, and you talked me through it rationally and emotionally. You prayed with me, and despite everything and my thoughts and emotions, wanted to tell you, just get away. It's my final answer. I went with it, and I'm really glad we did, because between those two flushes, I guesstimate between 1,500 2,000 stones. And my whole system is so different everywhere, from digestion to just mental emotional clarity. And I don't have the same really stark responses to eating like I used to. Just really drastic, extreme restrictions. And mentally, emotionally, I'm able to handle a lot more.
Yes. Yeah, it is interesting how one organ, and so many times people say, oh, I did liver flush or liver cleanse, without stopping the digestion process, which is a certain way. Yeah, there was some type of a cleaning, but in reality it needs to go really in depth to get the stuff out. That's when we get to see the results of things to come out. And it's like, one, you think, one is sufficient, right? But then doing the second one in this, and preparing the body is like doing such a deeper cleansing. You start seeing a lot more coming out. And
we saw definitely more stones, larger stones, different
size,
color stones. Clearly from the gallbladder as well.
A lot of mucus.
Tons of mucus. My goodness, I couldn't believe it. And it was absolutely critical to have your guidance, because it might have been okay a couple of years ago, but given the significance of the restriction at the ileocecal valve, without the prep work you guided me through, I'm kind of afraid of how large those stones might have been coming out and what kind of damage they might have been done. I may have landed in the ER.
Yeah, quite often people do, and that's what happens. And if there is no understanding and guidance, stuff starts to come out. If you do it too early, then yes, definitely.
I probably would have needed an emergency surgery I really didn't want.
Then also we have had an experience of you because of the ulcer you had and the internal bleeding that was taking place. Quite a bit of loss of blood, and you had an interesting experience with your hemoglobin. Can you share on that?
Yeah, one of the first symptoms back in March was a racing heart and shortness of breath, and that was because of the slow loss of blood over the time. And in June, my hemoglobins were measured at 6.6. And since then, before...
And you had a blood transfusion at that time?
I had two.
Infusion.
I had two, and since then, the only things that would bring up my blood count were a transfusion of blood or an iron IV infusion. And on that note, you were the only person to tell me that iron would feed the wrong cells, and I did have several iron infusions at the end of September and beginning of October, which could account for a good portion of the development of the illness afterward. But my blood was tested 4 days before I arrived at 9.7, which was about a week after getting 2 units of blood. And then we measured it again 2 weeks in. And for the first time since we discovered the anemia, it was pegged right at 9.7. And that is despite me clearly, obviously noticing much more blood loss than normal because of all the detox work we were doing.
And then we had another blood work done a week later after doing 3 weeks of the protocol.
And it went up to 10.2, and that was... I went that day. I didn't want to waste the time because we needed to do stuff, but I needed to know because psychologically, I was so weak physically, and psychologically, I needed to know where that number was. And when they showed me the number, I just broke down crying.
Yeah, so even though we were not infusing blood with adding iron, but we were stimulating your own red blood cell production in the body that was creating what we were getting, the numbers. of the hemoglobin. So yeah.
We've done nothing but natural between food, supplements, and
And we were staying away from foods that do build up a lot of iron, so we were trying to really kind of work around that. Can you touch on and talk a little bit about the energy level that was changing during, when you first came, it was around 2, you said, and then what was happening when you were here in the physiological and the psychological?
Well, physically, I could not go upstairs without pausing every 2 or 3 steps and really having to catch my breath. It was a huge thing just to go upstairs. And I really could not physically move through the different therapies as quickly as you wanted me to. I often had to be helped.
Encouraged.
Physically helped between
helped,
just walking on the same floor. And mentally, emotionally, I was as hypersensitive as I've ever known to sounds, to quick movements. I just couldn't handle it. It's too much input and overload. So that,
especially during a protocol when you were detoxing.
On that level, I was probably a 1, maybe, and at times even a 0. On the 3rd week when you served me the first semi-solid food meal.
A smoothie. And,
yes. I was so much clearer mentally and open in my heart. And I was able to appreciate sounds around me and other things people were doing without trying to control them or having a stark response to them.
A lot of lightness started to happen even on the emotional level.
And that was a Friday, and on the following Monday, in the morning, I was able to walk up the stairs without holding a handrail or leaning against the wall, with 0 pauses, and got all the way up to the top, and I was not winded. I may have been exerted a bit, but I was not winded.
Yeah, so 0 to 10, what would you say your overall energy level from being almost going down to 0 and, now 0 being the worst and 10 being the best?
Physically, I'd say I average around a 6. There's times I'm down as we've been adding more food in and the body's doing more work to digest, and that which takes a lot of energy. There's times I can still get down to, 3 or 4. However, overall, I'm just really, I'm excited to go home and actually organize my room and be able to consistently do my own food prep instead of asking someone to help. And mentally, emotionally, I was just this evening enjoying a very upbeat song. I play drums, and it's impossible for me to listen to music without playing along to it. And I always play in my mind more aggressively than the actual recording. And I had, in recent years, I've been hypersensitive to any stimulant that could just spin me out mentally. I'd be bouncing off the walls. And that included music. And I was able to play that song very upbeat and play as aggressively in my mind without being overloaded, overwhelmed, and exhausted afterwards. And in fact, you came to give me some food. I had my eyes closed and I was bebopping to it.
Yeah. I am really happy to see the achievements that were taking place, the laughter that I witnessed here, how the Lord was changing your heart, and how your friends could not recognize you on the phone.
I was talking, there was one day about a week ago, you told me I need to laugh 3 times a day so hard it hurts my side. And that just an hour later, I'm talking to my health coach and friend, and I told him I'm looking forward to our calls without all my emotional belly aching. And he said, "Oh, don't worry about it. I deal with stuff like that all the time." And he's telling me these crazy stories about a woman who deals with schizophrenia. And then, before that day, I would have, as he's telling me these stories, I would have actually been really negatively, harshly critical and judgmental of that person.
Mm-hmm.
But I just saw the humor and I was laughing hysterically.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, it's so great.
Yeah, praise God.
And I was able to appreciate your daughter is so expressive, so energetic constantly, and you used to just, get away, I can't see that because I can't do it. And
Yes.
And I've just been able to just watch her with joy and just fully appreciate who she is.
The bubbleness.
Yes. I used to get so bitter at people that were happy.
Because there was pain inside of you that we needed to deal with, and when God starts to remove little by little every part of the pain and accumulation of things that needed to be removed, things come up to light, and there's amazing things happening. I wanted you to say about the program. What can you say about program, the protocol, and the services that you have been provided here?
Well, the first thing I would say is that because I had been spending 3 to 5 years learning about natural health, that when I got the diagnosis, I was not scared.
Mm-hmm.
I knew exactly, I had already planned ahead of time that if that ever came to me, I knew I'd go natural. I knew I would decline surgery, radiation, chemo. I knew the perils of them, so I was very blessed that way. But something I really struggled with was you can't mess around with cancer, but you can't let it control you with fear. I was really having trouble with finding the balance between not getting caught up in all the ominous of it, but still treating it with enough
understanding the seriousness of it in a way, right?
Yeah, and not, spending too much time deciding what to do, but while not rushing into things.
At that point, as you would also witness, people at that time, they don't really have much time to, make decisions, and it's especially, you start coming up with different opinions of different professionals recommending certain things, and then person starts to decide which route to take, and especially if there is something that has to do with natural. Yeah,
because the natural is not nearly as well funded as the allopathic, with studies that you could actually trust that aren't tainted. There's so many differing opinions. It's monstrous project to wade through all that, and you don't have time to both research, decide, and then execute. And I was getting extremely overloaded with 2-3 different sources, conflicting opinions, and even when I would choose one and go with it, I really had nowhere to way to know this is going to be the right direction. At the end of November, I was at my wit's end, and I had nowhere to go. I said, God, you got to help, because I don't know what to do. It needs to be clear, concise, easy, and something I can just go all in with. And within days, I met your husband. 2 days later, we met, and you were the only person that I've met with ever to really, in an intelligent way, without being fearful, say to me what stage we're at and how serious it was to get started, and even yesterday. And miraculously, you had time in your schedule. You made time in your schedule. I was here within a couple of days, and I've been blown away by the amount of work you guys do, much of which I could not see in the beginning. How graceful and gracious you guys are when I would have these expectations, not having any idea that when you're not in front of me, you're moving a mile a minute, 17 hours a day. And your precision and your knowledge and your absolute confidence in your decisions. Instilled so much confidence in me that all I could do was just, I had no ability to try to learn along the way. All I could do was follow somebody, and this is the first time I was able to do that without having to make sure I understood too.
Mm-hmm.
And the extensions you've given me, despite the adjustments you've had to make to your schedule, have been extremely generous, and the end result is that for the first time since June, I don't just know that I'm going to get well. I know how I'm going to get well. I know how to get there. And there's many things we haven't gone over yet, but I know that you're going to partner with me, as you said, and it's just a matter of following.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been through a week of, at times, being out on my own, and again, falling into some very emotional eating, and dealing with physical setbacks, mental, emotional, challenges from it. And you have guided me through it masterfully, lovingly, without judgment and encouragement. And I already see that it's really okay.
Mm.
And I'm much more equipped now than when I came to exercise the strength that I need to make empowering decisions from a place of power and loving and taking care of myself, versus looking at it like I'm deprived or I can't.
Different point of view of understanding of things that are going to have to take place in your life, and the lifestyle changes and all this.
And this is absolutely necessary because of many emotional wounds for many, many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
I had learned a life of isolation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's absolutely imperative that we live in community. And in our culture, you almost cannot experience community without food and drink being involved.
Mm-hmm.
Food is obviously a pleasurable, desirable thing, and we're made to mirror one another. So when somebody else is enjoying something, and you know what enjoyment that'll bring you, it just draws you in all the more. So I felt so challenged because I want to engage socially more and relationally. I finally am able to push beyond my fears and trust, but yet every time this week I've, in the holidays, gone to be sociable, it's led to eating that has not served our goal.
Mm-hmm.
And I was back in that place, and I now feel much more confident that I can be on my own in a situation and be okay and productive and healthy with my thoughts and actions, and
have enough strength and willpower.
Yes, and then when
with God's grace.
Yes, and when I go into those environments, I can be more comfortable.
And actually, you can influence people with God's power that is upon your life, because when you have a victory in something, you can help other people, because there are so many people that are in a position like you are. They are looking for answers, and they're needing somebody to say, hey, let's do it together, because so many people, with the statistics that we have right now, every second man and every third woman is diagnosed with cancer. They're looking for those answers, somebody that could stand next to them and say, yeah.
Everybody knows health is important, and they know what's unhealthy, but they don't know how unhealthy it is. And because we have been conditioned by our medical system to believe that as long as we don't have symptoms, we're healthy, people do not know how much the body is progressing that direction. And I'm very excited to live a life that shows otherwise.
I want to kind of also, since you're looking up your notes, I want to also say, on a protocol that we've been doing, can you touch up on, sometimes people go on a protocol or just only natural plant-based stuff, herbs, oils, juices or something, but then they don't have access to technologies. And then there's other group of people that only go for technologies and they don't have this nutritional part.
The reason I knew about natural health is because of someone who went to a center with his friend to support him recovering from cancer, and it worked for him. They do both the nutrition and the technologies. However, and they do testing. However, they do not offer, and they offer consulting, but there's no direction. And they do not do enough precise testing to tell me why my individual person and case should use this therapy, or as I'm totally guessing. Where do I invest my money? It's all expensive, and it's its own stress to decide how to spend that money. I really felt lost, and even the fact that the liver mass was developing before I came back and got on the emotional eating was showing that it was not enough. It was not until I came here that your testing, particularly with the live blood analysis, which is what I've been looking for, really told the story. Or testing the energy in the cells. It really allowed me to be confident that the direction you're choosing is informed and not guessing or shooting from the hip just based on different experiences that are other people's scenario. We know that if you put white blood cells and cancer cells in a petri dish in a lab, the white blood cells will win every time. But as Hippocrates said, to treat the illness without treating the person is foolishness. And I really see that you treat the whole person. And that gave me a lot of confidence.
Like seeing you, we would have different technologies in a protocol throughout a day, and then throughout a day while you're doing the technology, we're doing all this nutrition with combination, and that's what creates this achievement of giving body the energy that it needs to go through the whole process. And
something that's absolutely mission critical to mention here is when I knew what was going on in June, I had been working to try to go raw vegan for 3 years. I was working somewhere that offered free food, and I hated the job. It was toxic very much, and I would always fail. And I was back and forth, despite the results that I would see and when I would stay on the diet. But in my case, the restriction in the digestion significantly restricted the options I had, even being completely raw vegan. And then when I was at the other center, they were so strict, I could only eat maybe 10% of the food they had to offer. And I was never getting full. And I had a lot of mental, emotional energy to wade through that the first 4 or 5 months. But October, November, that was just gone. I could not psychologically go without getting that sense of at least being full in my stomach, but would just lead to so many problems. And having grown up in an environment of much legalism, I was really reacting psychologically, emotionally to those restrictions. But the food options you've presented have been so good for me. I was resistant at first even to let you serve me Granny Smith apple juice, besides that being my favorite childhood food. And the 3 weeks on the juice or the liquid only diet, I can only think of a couple times that I felt hunger. And the only reason was because I was struggling so much through the day to get through things that you didn't have the opportunity to put as much nutrition in me as you wanted to. But I didn't feel, even though I had maybe appetites for certain things, I wasn't like, oh!
Struggling.
Yeah. And like put me in a straitjacket. And especially since you started introducing the more solid foods, everything you've served me has blown my mind about how many options I have that we haven't even talked about yet. And my mouth is exploding with flavor. There's no like, oh, I gotta eat this so I can get well, and I can't wait until I'm well
And
so I
it's
can
not
go
boring,
back.
huh?
Yeah. And I'm like, just yesterday or the other, I was having this what about Bob moment. Oh,
Uh-huh.
and it just keeps happening. And
Yeah.
I'm blown away by how many options there are that are so nourishing, so filling, so satisfying, mentally, emotionally, physically, without toxic side effects. Honestly, we don't think of side effects from food, but they're there. Without the triggers of inflammation and anything else. And I'm so grateful that you've opened up my options and my palate without feeling guilty about it.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm so glad the road that we've been through, and the grace of God that was here, and the hunger that God gave into your body actually also is indication of Him blessing you with that. It's an amazing miracle, and I've seen miracle after miracle taking place while you were here from all aspects of life, and so thankful that God has brought you here, and the guidance that He gave, and the achievements that we've been able to achieve, and the new amazing path that you're going to go on for the rest of your life, influencing others, and be fulfilling your destiny and what God has called you to be.
So many do not realize how much they are leaving on the table in the course of their life because they are not well. When you get well physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, everything begins to open up. There's one night I could not fall asleep almost the whole night because my mind was exploding with all these creative ideas about business, about different things. And many do not buy organic food because it's more expensive, or buy healthy food. But the cost, even if you don't get sick, which getting sick is a very costly experience, even if you don't get sick, when you're not operating at your peak, everything in your life suffers. Your finances, your joy, your relationships, all the things that matters to you the most.
Absolutely.
And there is no way you can be the person you were created to be. And so many people are walking around not being able to be excited about themselves and their life.
And we are the ones who live in this body. At the end, we are the ones who suffer if we...
I am so confident. Again, I want to say that because of God, I've been able to be confident that this is not unto death, despite the fact that doctors are saying this is terminal, which I laugh at. And when I was at the health center, I had to go to the hospital a couple of times. And I went the second time, I checked myself out. I got to get out of here. And they just want to flood you with all these things, whether they're toxic medications that they don't even ask your permission to give you or tell you why. And they served me food without even me ordering it. And it was loaded with sugar. And I go to my oncologist office, and there's candy lying around and coffee. And the only thing that was missing is, how do we get there? And now I know that question's answered, and it just amps up my confidence so much more that in of itself gives me so much energy, so much, many do not realize what goes into our energy level that is purely spiritual, mental, emotional, less tangible than what we perceive as being tangible, but actually far more tangible.
Unless we experience it, right? During this conversation, you've mentioned about how you had years of psychological issues that you have been going through different kind of therapists, and what happened during the detox, the physical detox of the internal filtration organs. You've had an amazing outcome even on the emotional side, and it's like how much we can accomplish when we really address the physical body as well, not just emotional. And in many cases, you know, in the Christian society, we blame the devil for everything and all that. And in reality, we just need to really clean up the temple.
Precisely. And something you taught me about that was, after we did all that cleansing work, it opened up my cells to receive more nutrition, which actually amplified the negative responses to the eating I did this week that was off the program, and I did not know that. And you know, the analogy that came to me is, if you want to go to the gym and really bulk up, that's a thing on its own. But if you have a broken arm, you have to heal your broken arm before you can really do that. Mm-hmm. And for so many years, I felt like I was beating my head against the wall, trying to get beyond these internal challenges that I knew were just completely sabotaging every area of my life. Mm-hmm. Now I feel like we've
started from the foundation.
Yes, we've removed a big part of the barrier, and I feel more equipped, more able to not get stuck in these cycles mm-hmm. of focusing on the negative, but instead focus on the positive without feeling like I'm neglecting something over here that just often becomes a trap and a labyrinth to keep me in stasis.
Mm-hmm. Well, we can go on, but I'm so thankful again that God has allowed us and gave us strength to go for 4 weeks, you know, and I'm happy that my husband has been able to assist you in the most difficult times when you were so weak, and he's been able to serve you with love and care, and just thankful to God for our team of doctors that we work together, that our team was able to accomplish the things, and you know, all the little services here and there and all these little details, everything was would fall in place to achieve create this puzzle, you know, the beautiful picture that God is creating in your life. So yeah, I think
he was invaluable to me, and walked me through many things, and was nothing but gracious and to me. And knowing that you have a team of people you consult with, you know, it removes that question of, well, how does she know this? Why is she choosing this? I know it's just a full team.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you, Michael, for sharing your testimony, and we'll have some more later on.
We will. Thank you so much for everything and all the sacrifices you've made. It's been everything I needed.